welcome back to my YouTube channel, Queening with Kai. This is your girl, Nakia Perry here, and today we are going to talk about mental health, mental wellness, and why it's important to help you achieve your goals and just live a healthy lifestyle. So today I have my best friend, my sorority sister, Talisa Ramos here, and she's going to shed some insight onto why mental health and making sure that you're taking care of yourself is important. And I'm going to let her introduce herself so you can understand why she has insight on this.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm happy to be here. So hi everybody, my name is Talisa Ramos. I am a licensed social worker in the state of Pennsylvania. I've been in the mental health field for a little bit over 10 years now. Yeah, a little bit over 10 years now. So I've done inpatient psychiatric care, I've done outpatient psychiatric care, I've done crisis intervention, what else? Emergency room, psychiatric assessments and referrals. So it's been a mix of things.
Yeah. So pretty much you've seen it all.
Yeah, pretty much.
You've seen it all.
Yes.
So I think, I want to start off with some of the misconceptions of mental health.
Yeah.
I know statistically minorities are less willing to go see a therapist or psychologist because it's this taboo that's around seeking help, that we think that we're broken. You have outside sources like family or friends tell you that that's not what we do. We talk it out amongst ourselves, or you just kind of bury it down. And I know for men, sometimes they think that's a sign of weakness. So can we talk about how not seeking help when you need it can actually make things worse in the long run?
Yeah, of course. And like you pretty much hit the head on a lot of the stigma that we hear, right? Especially in like Black and Latino families, we hear a lot of this, similar stereotypes as far as, oh, you're going to therapy, that's for crazy people. Or we even hear, oh, you're going to therapy, that's for white people, right? So we hear that like that's white people problems, which is really, really interesting because actually people of color are about 50% less likely to seek mental health treatment compared to their white counterparts.
I didn't know it was 50%.
Yeah,
that's
around there.
It's a huge gap.
Yeah, it is a huge gap. And it's something that I would definitely say that therapists, people who are in the mental health field, psychologists as well, psychiatrists of color are like trying to combat those stereotypes. And we understand that representation plays a big role, right? Essentially, what I like to say, because I know even in conversations like with our friends, when I bring up mental health or maybe seeking a therapist, they're like, yeah, it's not that bad yet. But what does it take to get that bad?
Yeah.
Right? Like, does it have to be to the point where it's impairing your level of functioning? And then what you had mentioned, to the point where then it would affect your life goals, whether it's your marriage or your career, right? And then we start to see an overspill of personal into the professional.
I think, at least with some of, our friends, what I see is if they separate it. So if you're doing great professionally, but your personal relationships are suffering, they can't tie that to, problems with their mental health or maybe needing to seek therapy. They think because they're excelling in one, that the issue isn't them. Because if they were, failing in both, then maybe they're the issue. But they don't understand that, you can still excel in one area, but your personal relationships are still just as important.
Absolutely. And my rebuttal to that, like when people like make that statement, it's kind of like similar to like a functioning alcoholic, right? Very similar into the patterns that, they present really well in the workforce, right? They're dependable in the workforce, but as soon as they leave their job, it kind of comes crashing down. Yeah. So what I usually tell like patients or clients or even like friends, colleagues who are experiencing that is, sooner or later it's going to catch up.
Yeah.
Sooner or later it's definitely going to catch up. And I think a common misconception people have is they think that they have to be at their worst to receive therapy, right? So that like we tend to think of a very like reactive rather than proactive.
That makes sense. Can you talk about, so even before, I went to therapy, I had this misconception that I couldn't afford it, that I was too broke to go to therapy. And we both work in higher education.
Yeah.
So what I have seen a lot is that, minority students will come to campus and then they'll seek therapy because it's free with their sessions.
Yeah.
Or they now have insurance that they got through the college and they feel like they can go for the first time because they can afford it. Can you talk about different ways that, if you're not a college student, that you can definitely look into finding affordable therapy? And then also, just in general, we prioritize things different and mental health should be a top priority. Sometimes we'll say, we can't afford therapy, but we can afford a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So
priorities, right? Like it always comes down to priorities, and very similar. And it's so interesting, like actually when I like have these discussions with people, and I ask them that, and I say like, let's say you have like diabetes, right? Nobody would look at you poorly if you're taking, some time off from work because you need to manage your sugars, you need to get, stable in that aspect, right? But people don't want to utilize mental health. And what I like to tell people, it's just as important as physical health. Just as important as physical health, because later on, sooner or later, your mental health will start to affect your physical health completely. And you really made an interesting point in regards to, especially people of color, when they come to college, they start to seek out therapy, right? And there's so many like different factors that go into that. A big part of that is access, right?
Yeah.
So they don't have the funding, or they don't have insurance, and now the school can provide that. Right? Also a level of support or change or an alter in the stigma that's surrounding it, where they're independent at that point and they can complete treatment on their own time, right? And they don't have to worry about family being like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Or people from back home saying like, what's going on? Why are you going to a therapist? Like, why are you sharing your business? So you've made some good points with like actually people of color coming into college and things of that sort. As far as access goes, I think a lot of people like love to say, oh, I don't have insurance, or oh, I don't have the money to spend on, but there's so many different alternatives that you can offer. And the one thing that I always say is, check in with your county, because every county, like we're in Pennsylvania now, but it also is anywhere in the United States, but certain counties get funding for mental health treatment. And what'll happen is you can call like for example, let's say you're from Bucks County, you would call Bucks County Mental Health Department, and they have allotments of funds that are for people who don't have insurance that can seek insurance, and they will fund your outpatient therapy. It's preventative care. Another option is there are therapists that are out there that do pro bono work. And then there are some that go by like a pay scale, as far as like you tell them how much you make and then they take off a little bit of percentage. So let's say, you're making, I don't know, $100 a week and they'll just charge you $10, even though a session would be $100. They go by your income on that.
I mean, that's really, really, really good information to know. I know personally I didn't know some of that information, and I would assume that other people didn't as well. Before I went to go see a therapist, I just automatically assumed that a session would be like, $50 or something every single time. When I did my research and I found out that my job actually covers 90%. So I'm left with just paying 10%. And the way I said I equate it is priority. So if I can afford to buy things that are necessary, like shoes or go out to eat, then I should definitely be able to invest in myself, something that will better me.
For sure. And that's actually a great recommendation to employee assistance programs. A lot of people, even if you're part-time, like even if you don't have benefits through your job, a lot of the times they will have like benefits for any staff member or employee.
And your family.
And your family too. Like it depends where you work, where they'll pay for like 6 sessions of therapy, right? Where that's better than none. So definitely, like there's definitely ways out there. I also know, sometimes individual therapy, it can get costly. There's also group therapy out there where you'll pay like $10 a session and you can do group therapy. And that also brings down costs as well.
I think that's an avenue definitely less traveled with minorities.
I
feel like we like to keep our problems close to our chest. And so the idea of group therapy and even sharing our secrets with other people is like really scary to us. When in reality, to do group therapy and hear that other people are feeling the same way you're feeling or going through what you're going through, that actually is a support system and to kind of form solidarity between you and the group. Yeah,
it definitely does. And a really good point to that is it starts to, like you said, normalize. Like, I'm not the only one that's going through this, right? That there are other people that are going through this too. Because a lot of the times, depression or even anxiety, when it starts to creep in, it begins or is a catalyst to isolation, right? Where you start to feel like, I'm different than people. I don't want to share this with other people because they won't understand or things of that sort. And group therapy really tries to dispel that myth, for sure. And also, we only know like what we've been exposed to, right? So with group therapy, what I love about that is a lot of the times, of course, I'm there facilitating the group sessions, but a lot of the times people are learning from each other, right? Like different coping skills, different ways to, manage stress, or different opportunities to promote self-care or practice self-care, where they hear it from those who are experiencing similar situations as they are.
So I know earlier you mentioned representation and the therapy field with more minority representation. Can you touch on that? And just talk about how now, minorities are feeling just a little bit more comfortable because there are websites that you can go to look, specifically look up, Black or African American therapists or Latino, Latinx, or Latina therapists.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting because, like, for this particular generation, right, they're just so dope. They really are. Like, they've like taken everything and anything and have just transformed it and really have utilized technology to like the max, right? So there's even like opportunities out there for texting therapists, right? Yeah. Or video chatting therapists, which could probably actually even be a little bit cheaper than going to one physically, right? But allowing the ability to connect. Which is really, really interesting. And they have utilized social media to really start this movement to like self-care. And that self-care is dope, and that self-care is what you need to succeed and balance your life, and it just is holistic approach, right? So now I'm like scrolling down my timeline and I have people like posting on Facebook, oh, my therapist said this today. Like, where 10 years ago, like, that would
taboo.
That would have never happened because people would have been like, oh my gosh, like, so-and-so is crazy. Like, why would she share that? But now, like, people are talking about it so freely, which is really, really nice and really unique. And I think, as years pass, right, and first-generation college students are going through the motions, they're starting to get into colleges, they're receiving these scholarships and really understanding the importance of education, we have more and more people of color seeking degrees, right? So whether it's masters, doctorates, even bachelor's degree that deal with mental health, with psych, with healthcare in general. And now I'm starting to see more normalization, right? Towards seeking these services because there's a Black therapist or there's a Latino therapist or Latinx therapist that looks like me. So if they're in that role, that means that that's accepted in my culture or something of the sort like that, right? So it's been a really, really neat shift for that to see. And don't get me wrong, like there are still some that do not feel comfortable with it, right? And what's really interesting, like especially with like Black and Latino or Latinx families, we hear like a lot of the same stigma, right? Like keep your dirty laundry at home.
Yeah.
Like don't share that. Like don't don't tell people what your issues are.
Or, you know, like your issues make me look bad.
Yes.
So if you're my child,
yes.
this is,
oh my
you know,
gosh.
you're going to therapy, then it makes me look like I'm a bad mom,
Mm-hmm.
or that I didn't raise you properly.
Yes.
Or now people are looking at me crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's such a toxic, like when you talk about it out loud, it's so toxic.
Yeah.
And of course, like our parents, they've definitely raised us to the best abilities that they can,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as time passes and trends pass and research is done, all you can do is improve.
Yeah.
Right? So even, and I think, I don't know, you can tell me if you agree with it, like our age, and even those who are younger than us, it's really our duty to kind of go back, like when we do go to schools or we're educating ourselves online, to go back to our family and share with them that knowledge,
Yeah,
right?
that information back.
Yes, take it back and, you know, have those debates at the kitchen or dining room table about mental health, about politics, about inclusion and diversity and how that's important. Because the only way that conversation is going to change is if we initiate it.
Yeah.
So I was the first one to go to therapy, and it wasn't until college because I really didn't have access to that beforehand, right? And then I got into the social work field, and I would honestly say like social work, me learning all of the different levels of psych, how social environment can impact life, as well as family environment, and all those different worlds that can really, like, they're holistic. They all intertwine. And it wasn't until I received that education that I was like, how can I be here? Being a therapist to somebody who I've never even, like, how hypocritical is that? Who I've never even received that, right? And I think it's definitely, when I first did it, it was a humbling experience because I was always on the other side. And then once I finally started going to therapy, I was like, wow, I finally know how the patient feels or the client feels. And it was very, very, very humbling.
And I feel like I do a really good job of, analyzing myself. But it's so different when you get to talk it out with someone.
Yeah, it is.
So, like I said, I think that you should go to therapy even when there's nothing wrong. Because it provides you so much more insight on you, and you're never your best self. Like, your best self is always being sought after. So it just pushes you to be even better, makes you aware of things that you might not be aware of, or things that you might try to turn a blind eye to.
Completely.
So, even if you're in a good spot, there's always a better spot to be in.
Completely.
That's true. I would say another common misconception about therapy is that you just go, you talk, and it works. And that's not true. That is not true. Like, therapy works if you are working too. And so that comes with being 100% honest and transparent with your therapist. Let's say I was in a really toxic friendship, and I went to you and as my therapist, but then I lied. I didn't give details or background. Then I'm going and using a resource that really can't help me because I wasn't honest. I spent time knowing that I was holding back information, and my therapist doesn't know that. So therefore, you're using a resource, but it's not really working for you. Yeah,
completely. You really hit the nail on the head with that. Like, therapy only works if you want it to work, right? And I think a lot of times when people want to seek therapy, right, or things have gotten so bad, like, I'm gonna turn to therapy. Well, first, I applaud those people who make that statement, right? Because now they're leaning towards recovery. But sometimes they think there'll be a instant solution. I've had patients who would come in, right? And during the first session, I'll be completely honest with you, it's not treatment. It's us building, we're starting and the building blocks of our rapport. Right? Because you have to feel comfortable in order to share.
Trust.
Exactly. So it's me getting to know you during the first session. It's me asking questions about your history, your family, your parents, your relationships, right? What you feel like you struggle with. What are your goals for treatment? And it's us working together to create a treatment plan for the next sessions that could take weeks, months, it's different for everybody, right? But I've definitely had people who have come in and they're like, yeah, so I just wanted to do a quick check-in, and I'm like, Mary, like, tell me about yourself first, and, you know, I want to, like, why are you here?
Yeah.
And they think it's just like a one-time thing, and it's not. Another thing I think people get really discouraged in with the process is, you know, sometimes you sign up for a therapist, and it's not until you go, or even like a few sessions in, where you're like, man, I don't think we click.
Yeah.
I don't know if we click. Or it's not until you experience your first therapist that you're like, okay, I think this is what I need. Mm-hmm. Right? So like for me in particular, like with my first therapist, she was great. Right? And I experienced her. She was really good with giving me feedback and things of that sort. She did a lot of like holistic treatment, like aromatherapy. We did some like art therapy. Great. She was a great clinician. But I always felt like there was a piece missing, and I think it was the cultural piece with us, mm-hmm. right? Because she was not a person of color, mm-hmm. and I felt uncomfortable sharing with her microaggressions that I faced, yeah. right? And then when I started hiding stuff from my therapist, I'm like, yeah. this isn't working, yeah. right? So it wasn't until like my third therapist, who is now, like, she's now a person of color, who I feel like, okay, like, this is it. Like, this was the connection that I needed. She gets what I'm saying, and she can challenge me without me being a bit defensive. Yeah. So sometimes it takes one therapist, sometimes it takes the fourth therapist. Like, my biggest advice is don't give up.
Yeah. So just in wrapping up, if you had some quick tips or takeaways from this video, what would you say?
Quick tips or takeaways. Okay. That therapy is for everyone, mm-hmm. one, right? That mental health affects every part of your life, your career, your physical health, wellness, relationships. Mm-hmm. If you feel like it's not affecting it now, it will affect it later. So connect with a therapist now. Mm-hmm. Don't wait. It's always great to at least have somebody there that you can always speak to. Yeah. And it stays there, yeah. right? It doesn't follow you, and it's confidential, which is amazing.
And I would say unloading is not the same thing as unpacking. Mm-hmm. So just because you think that you have someone that you can talk to, a therapist helps you unpack that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's not just about going to someone and just spilling everything. It's about having someone who's trained to help you unpack those emotions and those feelings. So to wrap this up, pretty much, you know, therapy is essential. It is so important to make sure that you're growing as a person, that you are your best self, and to make sure that you reach all of your goals, queens. So if you are not seeing a therapist now, I suggest that you seek one out, and then make sure you share this gem with your family, your friends, because you want everyone to be able to live their best life. So thank you so much to Lisa for popping by to talk to the queens, and thank you for watching my YouTube video. Please, please, please subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thanks, queens.